Maya Johnson had always been the type of person who knew exactly what she wanted. Growing up in a small town outside of Atlanta, she spent countless hours in her grandmother's kitchen, watching those weathered hands work magic with simple ingredients. The aroma of fresh cornbread and slow-cooked greens filled their modest home, creating memories that would later shape her life's passion. "You cook with your heart first, then your hands," her grandmother would say, a philosophy Maya carried with her through culinary school and into the restaurants where she worked her way up from dishwasher to line cook to sous chef. Each position taught her something valuable about the business, but also about the way people treated her differently because of her skin color. The journey wasn't easy. Maya worked double shifts, picked up extra catering gigs on weekends, and lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates to save money. While her classmates from culinary school got promoted quickly, she often had to work twice as hard for the same recognition. There were nights she came home with aching feet and doubt swirling in her mind, wondering if her dream was worth the struggle. But Maya wasn't one to give up. She kept a journal where she sketched restaurant layouts and wrote down menu ideas. She collected vintage serving dishes from thrift stores and tucked them away for someday. When friends would ask about her future plans, her eyes would light up as she described the warm, welcoming space she imagined creating, a place where food would bring people together across all walks of life. After 8 years of saving, planning, and building her reputation in the local food scene, Maya finally spotted the perfect location. It was an old brick building with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. The rent was steep, and the renovation costs made her stomach knot with anxiety. But something about it felt right. With a small business loan and her life savings, Maya signed the lease on her 30th birthday. Savory Soul was born from countless late nights, early mornings, and the support of friends who believed in her vision. The menu featured her grandmother's recipes, refined with Maya's professional training but still carrying that same heart and soul. The walls were painted a warm yellow. Family photos hung in vintage frames, and those thrift store dishes finally found their purpose. Opening night was a blur of excitement and terror. Maya had hired a small but dedicated staff, including a few former colleagues who had witnessed her determination firsthand. As the first customers arrived, she felt a wave of emotion watching her dream materialize before her eyes. The reviews that followed were better than she could have hoped, praising not just the food but the genuine hospitality that made everyone feel like family. As months passed, Savory Soul developed a loyal following. What made Maya especially proud wasn't just the success, but seeing people from different backgrounds sharing tables, connecting over her food. The restaurant became more than a business. It became a community hub. Despite her growing success, Maya remained hands-on. She could have easily stepped back, managing from a distance, but that wasn't her style. She loved knowing her regular customers by name, helping during busy shifts, and mentoring her younger staff. Many people who came in for the first time had no idea they were being served by the owner herself, an arrangement that suited Maya just fine. "I never want to be so important that I forget what it feels like to serve others," she told her assistant manager one evening as they closed up. "This place works because every person who walks through that door matters to us, whether they're sitting at a table or bringing out the food." Little did Maya know that this philosophy would soon be tested, in a way she never expected, when a particular customer would mistake her humble approach for something else entirely, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything she had built. Friday evenings at Savory Soul were always a whirlwind. The restaurant hummed with conversation, laughter bounced off the walls, and delicious aromas wafted from the kitchen. Maya had just finished helping her pastry chef perfect a new dessert when she noticed the front getting busy. Without hesitation, she tied an apron around her waist and headed out to the dining area. "Looking like we might need an extra hand tonight," she said to Layla, her head server who was balancing 3 plates of fried green tomatoes. "You're a lifesaver," Layla replied with a grateful smile. Table 12 just got seated, 4 people. Looks like a business dinner. Maya grabbed menus and water pitchers, taking a moment to straighten her simple black button-down shirt before approaching the table. 4 people sat there, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in expensive suits that screamed corporate success. The oldest man, probably in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and a gold watch that caught the light, seemed to be leading the conversation. "Good evening. Welcome to Savory Soul." Maya greeted them warmly. "My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." The man barely looked up from his phone. "Water, no ice, lemon on the side," he said dismissively, still scrolling through emails. Maya maintained her smile as she poured water for everyone. When she began explaining the evening specials, the man cut her off. "Do you have a wine list, or is this place just soul food?" he asked, emphasizing soul food in a way that made Maya's skin prickle. "We actually have an award-winning wine selection," she replied evenly. "Our sommelier curates bottles from small, family-owned vineyards worldwide. I'd be happy to make recommendations based on what you're thinking of ordering." The woman at the table shot Maya an apologetic glance as the man sighed dramatically. "Let me guess, you're going to suggest something sweet because that's what you people usually prefer." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. One of the younger men cleared his throat and quickly asked about the chef's specialties, trying to change the subject. Maya professionally pivoted the conversation, describing the restaurant's signature dishes with the same enthusiasm she always had. Inside, she felt that familiar burn, the one she'd experienced countless times throughout her career. The one that reminded her that some people would always see her skin color before they saw her capabilities. As she walked away to give them time with the menus, she overheard the man say, "Can't we get someone who actually knows about fine dining?" The kitchen was chaotic as usual, but it was the kind of chaos Maya loved. Controlled, purposeful, with everyone moving in synchronized rhythm. She checked on a few orders, adjusted a garnish, and returned to the dining room with renewed composure. When she returned to take their orders, the difficult customer seemed increasingly irritated by her presence. He questioned every recommendation she made, snickered when she described the preparation of their signature duck confit, and made a show of wiping his silverware with his napkin after she placed it on the table. His companions looked increasingly uncomfortable, but no one challenged him. Maya had seen this dynamic before. The powerful boss no one dared to contradict, even when his behavior crossed lines. The breaking point came when their food was delayed by 10 minutes, an unavoidable situation caused by a small kitchen mishap. Maya approached their table to explain. "I apologize for the slight delay. Your entrees will be out in just a few minutes. The chef wants to ensure everything is perfect for you." The man's face turned red. "This is ridiculous. We've been waiting forever. Do you even know how to do your job? Where's your manager? I need to speak to whoever's actually in charge of this place." Heads turned throughout the restaurant. Maya felt dozens of eyes on her as the man's voice grew louder. "I don't think you understand the caliber of clients you're dealing with," he continued, gesturing to his colleagues. "We could buy this entire block if we wanted to. We need someone competent handling our table, not—" He waved his hand dismissively at her. Maya took a deep breath, remembering all she'd built, all she'd overcome. She'd faced worse than this man, and still managed to create her dream. With perfect composure, she prepared to respond, not knowing that the next few moments would change everything. The dining room of Savory Soul grew uncomfortably quiet. The man's voice had risen to a level that made other diners stop mid-bite and turn toward the commotion. Maya stood perfectly still, her expression calm despite the storm building inside. Her years of experience had taught her how to wear a mask of professionalism, even when people treated her poorly. "Sir," she began, her voice steady and low, "I understand you're frustrated about the wait. I can assure you—" "You can't assure me of anything," he interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're just the help. I want to speak to someone with actual authority." A young couple at the next table exchanged shocked glances. An elderly woman eating alone shook her head disapprovingly. Maya felt the tension spreading through her restaurant like spilled wine on a white tablecloth. Impossible to contain once. It started flowing. "Do you know who I am?" The man continued, pulling out a business card and slapping it on the table. "I've dined at restaurants all over the world. I'm personal friends with 3 Michelin-starred chefs, and I've never been treated with such incompetence." His colleagues looked mortified. The woman in the group stared down at her lap, while one of the younger men nervously adjusted his tie. The third companion glanced around apologetically at nearby tables, clearly wishing he could disappear. Maya took a deep breath. She thought about all those nights working double shifts to save for her restaurant. She remembered the bank loan officer who had suggested she might want to consider a less competitive industry. She recalled the landlord, who mysteriously rented to someone else after meeting her in person, despite her application being first in line. She had overcome all of that through pure determination and talent. She wouldn't let this man's rudeness ruin what she had built. "You know," the man said, his voice getting even louder as he jabbed a finger in her direction. "You people always play the victim when things don't go your way. But maybe if you focused more on proper service instead of attitude, you'd get somewhere in life." The restaurant fell completely silent. The words "you people" hung in the air like a thundercloud. Maya felt her hands trembling slightly, but she clasped them together in front of her. She knew what "you people" meant. She had heard variations of it her entire life. Just then, Layla approached with another server. They had sensed the situation spiraling and came to support their boss. Layla stepped forward, about to speak, when the kitchen door swung open. David, Maya's manager and longtime friend, emerged with a look of concern on his face. At 6'2" with broad shoulders and a typically cheerful demeanor, his presence alone often diffused tense situations. Tonight, however, his usual smile was replaced with a serious expression as he made his way toward the table. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking directly at the man who was now adjusting his expensive suit jacket, perhaps thinking he'd finally found someone in charge. The man straightened up. "Yes, there certainly is. We've been waiting an inexcusable amount of time for our food, and this waitress has been nothing but difficult. I'd like to speak with the owner or manager immediately." A slight smile touched David's lips as he glanced at Maya, a silent question passing between them. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod. "Sir," David said, his voice clear enough for nearby tables to hear, "I'd like to introduce you to Maya Johnson." He gestured toward her with respect. "She's not just your server tonight. Ms. Johnson is the executive chef and owner of Savory Soul. She trained at the Culinary Institute of America, worked under Chef Jean-Pierre in Paris, and was nominated for a James Beard Award last year. This restaurant is her creation, from the recipes passed down through generations of her family to the artwork on these walls." The man's mouth opened slightly, words failing him for perhaps the first time that evening. His face flushed red, not with anger this time, but with embarrassment. Maya stepped forward, professional as ever. "Now about those entrees. They'll be out in exactly 3 minutes. Can I get anyone a fresh drink while you wait?" The silence at the table was deafening. Time seemed to stand still in the restaurant as the rude customer's face cycled through emotions, shock, disbelief, and finally uncomfortable realization. The woman sitting beside him pressed her lips together, clearly suppressing a smile. One of the younger men suddenly became very interested in rearranging his silverware, while the other cleared his throat repeatedly. Well, that's..." The man stumbled over his words, his previous confidence evaporating like morning dew under a hot sun. He tugged at his collar as if it had suddenly tightened around his neck. Maya maintained her composure, standing tall, with the quiet dignity that had carried her through countless challenges. The power dynamic had shifted completely, yet she had no intention of abusing her position the way he had. "As I mentioned," she continued smoothly, "your entrees will be out shortly. Our duck confit takes time to prepare properly. We render the fat slowly to ensure the meat remains tender and flavorful." Her voice carried the same patient, professional tone she'd used before his outburst. The man nodded wordlessly, unable to meet her eyes. His companions shot him glances that ranged from embarrassment to silent reproach. "I think we owe you an apology," the woman said, finally breaking the uncomfortable silence. "That was completely unacceptable behavior." Maya nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't make a scene of accepting their apology. Years of experience had taught her that making others comfortable after they'd been called out sometimes meant letting them sit with their discomfort for a moment. David remained by her side, a silent show of solidarity. Around them, the restaurant slowly returned to its normal hum of conversation, though several diners continued to steal glances at their table. An older couple at a nearby table gave Maya a subtle thumbs up, while a group of young professionals whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. "Perhaps we should leave," suggested one of the younger men, half rising from his seat. "Your food is almost ready," Maya replied. "I don't see any reason for you to go hungry." She turned to David. "Would you mind checking on their order?" I believe Chef Alejandro was putting the finishing touches on the duck. As David headed back to the kitchen, Maya addressed the table once more. "While we wait, may I suggest a wine pairing? We have a lovely Pinot Noir that complements the duck beautifully." She spoke directly to the woman this time, who nodded enthusiastically, perhaps eager to move past the awkwardness. "That sounds perfect," the woman replied. "4 glasses, please." The man who had caused the scene still hadn't spoken. He sat rigidly in his chair, his earlier bravado replaced by visible discomfort. When he finally looked up at Maya, something had changed in his eyes, not quite remorse, but perhaps the beginning of recognition. "I didn't realize," he began, his voice much quieter now. "Most people don't," Maya replied simply. "That's often the point." She didn't elaborate further. She didn't need to explain how often she'd been underestimated or overlooked. She didn't have to detail the extra hours, the additional credentials, the flawless track record she'd needed just to be taken half as seriously as her counterparts. The situation spoke for itself. David returned with 4 plates balanced expertly on his arms, followed by Layla carrying the wine. The presentation was impeccable: seared duck confit with orange reduction, served with roasted root vegetables, and a small stack of crispy potato galette. Steam rose from the plates, carrying the rich aroma of Maya's grandmother's secret spice blend that she'd perfected over decades. "Your entrees," Maya announced as the plates were set down. "The duck is from a local farm just 30 miles from here. We brine it for 24 hours before cooking." The tension at the table visibly eased as attention shifted to the food. Maya poured the wine herself, explaining its notes and origin as she moved around the table. When she reached the difficult customer, she served him with the same care and attention she'd given the others. "Enjoy your meal," she said with genuine warmth. "I hope it's worth the wait." As she walked away, she heard the woman exclaim over the first bite. "This is absolutely divine." Maya smiled to herself. In her restaurant, the food always had the final word. The table fell silent as the 4 business associates ate their meals. The food had worked its magic, temporarily easing the tension that hung in the air. Maya moved through her restaurant, checking on other tables, refilling water glasses, and chatting warmly with regulars. She purposely gave the difficult table some space, allowing them to enjoy their meal without the weight of what had happened. From across the dining room, she noticed how they ate with appreciation. Even the rude man seemed to be savoring each bite, though his eyes remained fixed on his plate. The woman in the group caught Maya's gaze and gave an appreciative nod. One of the younger men was practically beaming as he tasted the duck, all traces of earlier embarrassment momentarily forgotten, in the pleasure of good food. When it came time for dessert, Maya approached their table again. The atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but the sharp edges had softened. "Would anyone care for dessert?" she asked, her voice pleasant. "Our pastry chef just finished a bourbon pecan pie that pairs wonderfully with coffee." The woman spoke up immediately. "That sounds amazing. I'd love a slice." The 2 younger men also ordered dessert. The difficult customer hesitated, then shook his head. "Just coffee for me," he mumbled, still avoiding eye contact. As Maya turned to leave, he finally spoke directly to her. "The duck was excellent." The words seemed to cost him considerable effort. "Thank you," Maya replied simply. "It's my grandmother's recipe." When she returned with their desserts, the difficult customer surprised everyone by standing up. For a moment, Maya thought he might be leaving early, but instead, he cleared his throat and addressed her directly. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice much quieter than before. My behavior was inappropriate. The word seemed stiff, unpracticed, as if apologizing wasn't something he did often. Maya nodded, acknowledging his words without rushing to make him feel better. This wasn't the first time she'd faced such treatment, and sadly it wouldn't be the last. What mattered was that her restaurant remained a place of dignity for her, her staff, and her customers. "I appreciate that," she said finally. At Savory Soul, we believe everyone deserves respect, those serving the food and those enjoying it. The woman at the table smiled at this, nodding in agreement. One of the younger men seemed genuinely relieved by the exchange, while the other looked at Maya with newfound respect. "We'd like to cover everyone's meals tonight," the difficult customer added suddenly, gesturing vaguely around the restaurant. "All the tables?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's very generous but unnecessary. Your apology is sufficient." "Please," he insisted, an edge of desperation in his voice. "I'd like to make amends." Maya considered this for a moment. She understood what he was trying to do: erase his guilt with money, a quick fix to avoid sitting with his discomfort. She'd seen it before with other wealthy customers who thought they could buy their way out of bad behavior. "Instead," she suggested, "we have a program that sponsors cooking classes for underprivileged youth in the neighborhood. Many of them hope to enter the culinary field, but lack resources and mentorship. Your contribution would be more meaningful there." The table fell silent again, but this time with a different energy. The difficult customer looked at Maya directly for the first time that evening, really seeing her. "Of course," he said finally. "I'd be happy to support that." As they finished their desserts, Maya noticed the mood at the table had transformed. The woman was asking questions about the restaurant's history. The younger men were discussing the flavors in their food with genuine interest. Even the difficult customer seemed present in a way he hadn't been all evening, listening rather than dominating the conversation. When it came time to settle the bill, Maya handled it personally. She added a brochure about the youth cooking program with the receipt. The difficult customer handed back his credit card along with a business card. "If you ever need anything for your program, connections, equipment, whatever, please call my office," he said. His tone had none of its earlier condescension. It wasn't quite humility, but it was something close to respect. As they prepared to leave, Maya noticed the other diners watching with interest. The story of what had happened earlier had clearly spread throughout the restaurant. She wondered how many versions of this tale would be told tomorrow, how many people would share their witness to a small but significant moment of recognition. After the group left, Maya continued her shift, moving between tables with the same warmth and professionalism she always showed. If other customers had noticed the confrontation, and many had, they didn't mention it directly, though several left larger tips than usual with notes of appreciation on their receipts. One elderly couple who came in every Friday night squeezed her hand as they paid their bill, a silent gesture of solidarity. When the last customer finally departed around 11, Maya locked the front door and leaned against it for a moment, letting out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The restaurant was quiet now, just the muffled sounds of kitchen staff cleaning up and soft jazz playing through the speakers. "You okay, boss?" Layla asked, stacking the last of the clean wine glasses. Maya nodded, summoning a smile. "Nothing I haven't dealt with before." David appeared from the kitchen, dish towel slung over his shoulder. "You handled that like a champion," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "I don't know how you stayed so calm." "Practice," Maya replied with a small shrug. She straightened up and rolled her shoulders back. "I'm going to finish up some paperwork. You two head out when you're done." In the small office tucked behind the kitchen, Maya finally allowed herself to sink into her chair. The walls around her were covered with framed articles about the restaurant, pictures of her grandmother and her culinary school diploma. This room was her sanctuary, the place where she could be completely herself without the performance required in the dining room. She buried her face in her hands, feeling the weight of the evening settle on her shoulders. The truth was, no matter how many times she faced situations like tonight's, they still hurt. Each dismissive look, each condescending comment, Each time someone assumed she couldn't be in charge, they all left tiny cracks that she had to continuously repair. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She quickly straightened up, wiping at her eyes. "Come in." Chef Alejandro, who had been with her since opening day, peeked his head in. His white coat was spattered with sauce and his usually neat hairnet was slightly askew after the busy night. "Just wanted to check on you before I go," he said, his gentle eyes taking in her posture. He'd worked alongside Maya long enough to read the subtle signs of her distress, even when she tried to hide them. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Then caught herself. With Alejandro, she didn't need to pretend. "Actually, I'm tired, not just physically tired, but..." She gestured vaguely, searching for words. "Soul tired," he finished for her, nodding in understanding. "Exactly." She leaned back in her chair. "Sometimes I wonder if it will ever change. If there will ever be a day when people see me as the owner, first, not just..." She trailed off. Alejandro stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind him. "You know what my abuela always said? The people who matter can see past the surface to what lives in your heart." Maya smiled, despite herself. "Your grandmother sounds a lot like mine. Wise women, both of them." He paused, then added, "By the way, 3 different tables asked for your business card tonight after that scene. One couple said they want to book the whole restaurant for their anniversary next month. And that food blogger, the one with a popular Instagram, she posted about your duck confit with a caption about how the owner personally served her and made dining magical." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Really? Check your phone. I think your follower count just doubled." Alejandro grinned. "Sometimes these things have a way of working out differently than we expect." He wasn't wrong. Maya pulled out her phone to find dozens of notifications. The restaurant's social media accounts were buzzing with activity. Several local news outlets had sent messages requesting interviews about female restaurant owners or Black-owned businesses in the city. "See?" Alejandro said, nodding at her surprised expression. "For every person who underestimates you, there are 100 more who are inspired by you." As he left, Maya scrolled through the comments on their latest post. Among the usual compliments about the food were new messages. "Watching the owner handle a difficult situation with such grace tonight was incredible. Can't wait to come back. This place isn't just about amazing food, it's about dignity and respect. I'll be bringing all my clients here from now on. Saw something powerful happen at dinner tonight. This restaurant is special." Maya sat down, her phone, a mix of emotions washing over her. The evening had been challenging, but maybe, just maybe, something meaningful had come from it after all. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. Autumn had begun painting the trees outside Savory Soul with splashes of gold and crimson, and the restaurant had never been busier. Maya stood at the entrance, watching as her host guided guests to their tables. Every seat was filled with a growing wait list of people hoping for cancellations. The phone hadn't stopped ringing all day. The local newspaper had run a feature about Savory Soul the previous weekend. The reporter had reached out after hearing about what happened that Friday night, but Maya had steered the conversation toward the restaurant's community programs instead. She didn't want to be known for one confrontation, but for the food and atmosphere she had worked so hard to create. Still, the publicity didn't hurt, David noted as he approached, carrying a stack of new menus. "We're booked solid for the next month." Maya nodded, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Success was what she had always worked toward, but she couldn't help wondering if part of this sudden interest came from people hoping to witness another dramatic scene. She hoped not. "The cooking class starts in 20 minutes, David reminded her. "Your grandmother's cornbread recipe, right?" "Right." Maya smiled, thinking of the 12 teenagers who would soon fill her kitchen for the weekly youth cooking program. Since the incident, donations to fund the program had poured in, allowing her to expand from 1 class a week to 3. She'd even hired 2 part-time instructors to help manage the growing interest. As Maya headed to the kitchen to prepare for the class, she noticed a delivery man struggling with an enormous arrangement of flowers at the door. She rushed over to help, taking one end of the heavy vase. "Delivery for Maya Johnson," he said, checking his clipboard. "Owner of Savory Soul." The flowers were stunning, a lush arrangement of autumn blooms in rich oranges and deep purples. Maya thanked the delivery man and carried them to the host, stand, curious about who sent them. The card read, "Continued success to a true professional. Your grace under pressure was a lesson I needed to learn. Thank you for seeing past my behavior to the potential for change." It was signed by the difficult customer from that night, along with a note that his company had made a substantial donation to her youth cooking program. Maya tucked the card into her pocket, feeling an unexpected sense of closure. That night had been a turning point, though not in the way she might have expected. Rather than defining her by a painful moment, it had opened new doors, not just for business, but for creating meaningful change. In the kitchen, her young students were already washing their hands and tying on aprons. They ranged in age from 13 to 18, most from neighborhoods where culinary training would otherwise be inaccessible. Maya watched as they chatted excitedly among themselves, their faces lighting up when she entered. "Miss Maya," one girl called out, "I made your cornbread recipe for my family last week. My grandpa said it was the best he ever tasted." "That's wonderful," Maya replied, genuinely touched. "Today we're going to learn how to make it with jalapenos and honey butter." As she demonstrated the techniques, Maya found herself thinking about her own grandmother and how proud she would be of this moment, not just of the successful restaurant, but of these young people learning to cook with love and care. After class, Maya returned to her office to find Layla waiting with a folder. "The Small Business Association called," she said, barely containing her excitement. "They want you to be their keynote speaker next month. They said your story represents everything they believe in: perseverance, excellence, and breaking barriers." Maya took the folder, flipping through the details. She had never thought of herself as a speaker, but perhaps sharing her journey could help others find their path. "There's more," Layla continued. "The difficult customer from a few weeks ago, his company just booked our entire restaurant for their holiday party in December. The woman who was with him, turns out she's the VP of Diversity and Inclusion there, specifically requested that you oversee the menu planning." Maya couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Life has a funny way of coming full circle, doesn't it? As the evening service began, Maya stood in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, taking in the scene before her. The restaurant hummed with conversation and laughter. Her staff moved with confident efficiency. The aromas of her grandmother's recipes filled the air. This was always what she had wanted, not just a successful business, but a place where food could bridge divides and bring people together, where everyone, regardless of who they were, could feel the warmth of true hospitality, where even difficult moments could transform into opportunities for growth.